Hey guys, the WalterFootball.com After Dark Show for January 24, 2025. We're going to be doing the Thursday thoughts for the Week 21 NFL picks against the spread for the 2024 NFL season. That's the NFC Championship between the Redskins and the Eagles, and the AFC Championship between the Chiefs and the Bills. Before we get everything started, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video. Visit the link in the description for the merch store. I know there were some bets being taken on Twitter today as to what shirt I was wearing, if I was going to wear the same shirt that for the third night in a row. I'm not. It's an upset. I'm wearing the AMC 801 shirt that we have in the merch store. I would not recommend anyone to buy AMC shares. That is financial. That is a financial opinion. But you can get that shirt and others here at the merch store for 25% off. Everything's 25% off except for the mug. I don't know why. But yeah, you can get good deals here to help us out. You can go to Amazon, buy my books. The most recent one is Jerks of the College Years, where I make fun of people. I saw Penn State. Also, how the 2020 MVP was stolen, which was how Brett Favre tried to sabotage Aaron Rodgers in 2020. It's an expose I wrote. Did a lot of research on it, and it was the genesis of the No Cookie Jordan Love nickname. So if you're ever wondering about that, you can check that out. Also, please consider super chats, super stickers. We had some great ones on Tuesday. We had a $10 from Alan Stafford. We had $5 from Slew, and $4 for John Sanders. And then yesterday, Slew gave us a $7 super chat to kind of signify his granddaughter's birth. So congratulations, Slew, once again, and thank you so much. Just really appreciate these contributions. All right, we are joined tonight once again by Andy Iskoe. Andy, how are you? How was your, I guess, hiatus? So we haven't talked for in a couple of weeks. How have you enjoyed the playoffs so far? You're on mute.
Yeah, I just got it. I was just looking at something. I was trying to find. You got a shout out. I think I want to say, was it Mark Lawrence or something? Had a shout out to you about some comment you made. I think after the maybe it was after the Eagles game or something the other day. He just pointed out that there was a comment attributed. I'm going to try and find that if I can, so I can share it with everyone.
Oh, that'd be neat. Nice.
Yeah, it's been a few good weeks. Some of the surprising upsets. I did not expect. I did not expect Washington to win as easily as they did against Detroit. I didn't think an upset was out of the question, though I certainly I had actually bet on Detroit. Got off that in mid-game, however. But that was really a surprise in many respects. Not so much because of what Washington did necessarily, because Detroit gained a lot of yards, but just the mistakes that Detroit made. I think they may have gone into that game maybe a little bit overconfident, or maybe a little bit defensive, considering how they had that big lead last year against San Francisco and didn't come through. And I think you could say, and I think we're going to see it this week as well, Washington was playing nice and loose, almost like we have nothing to lose, but we're confident that we got a chance to win as well.
Yeah, look, Washington played its A game, or A+ game. Detroit played its D, maybe D- game. They did some good things with Jahmyr Gibbs, but and it was close for a while, but too many turnovers. They just killed themselves with mistakes. Jared Goff was terrible, and as I watched Jared Goff capsize, I just went back to thinking what Sean McVay basically said when he traded Goff away. He said, "I can't win with this guy," and we see now. We saw it against Washington. It wasn't even a good defense. Washington's pretty mediocre defensively, and Jared Goff just had a meltdown. And then there was a very odd play call with Ben Johnson calling that Jameson Williams pass that was intercepted. I thought that was the end of the Lions. I still thought they had a chance up until that play, but once that was intercepted. Yeah. Yeah, it was over. Yeah. You said something interesting. You said you bet the Lions and then you got out of it. Do you want to tell the audience like how?
I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but it was, I think it was early third quarter, and I think it was a 10-point game, and I forget what the line was, but Washington was a slight underdog at that point because there was still 20-something minutes to go. And so I ended up making not a money line play on Washington. I still thought Detroit might come back to win, but I made a point spread. I forget the number was at that time from that point on towards the rest of the game. So that's one of the things we have now, and I know I have it a lot offline, offshore rather, as far as being able to bet basically during any timeout.
Yeah, it's great. You could do it online as well here. FanDuel,
Yeah.
DraftKings, BetMGM, etc. They have all these live lines. Yeah, Evan, who joins us on the show on Tuesday, he talked me into Washington over 43.5 points at one point, and they hit 45, so that ended up working out.
Was that during the game?
Yeah, it was during the game.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's in the third. I think it was at halftime actually. If I'm not mistaken, maybe it was at some point in the third quarter.
Well, what they have? I think it was 31-21 at halftime. I recall.
Yeah, and I think it was at that point, or maybe it was the start of the third quarter. He said bet over 43.5 points for Washington, and it hit. So that was nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That did make sense because you knew that Detroit would have to quicken the pace a little bit, meaning more plays being run because they were behind. And forget about Detroit covering at that time; they were desperate just to win the game.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So how did you do pick wise this past 2 weeks? You said you had Detroit, but what about the other games?
I'm trying to remember what I did have Buffalo. I like them quite a bit against Baltimore.
Okay.
I did have the 9.5 with Houston, but my against Kansas City on Saturday. I was watching that one over at the Westgate, and the roar went up when that safety occurred because some people ended up covering the 9.5, and other people ended up losing the -9.5, and it was actually a play before that I said, regardless of what happens on the next play, it's going to be a huge roar because either one side will have been disappointed if I think Houston didn't make the first down or something, and the other side would be thrilled because they got stopped, and so the other side was going to win. But so I did have Houston. I did have Philadelphia. I pushed in that one. I did have -6 on that one, but I did lose on the under. And let me see what was the Saturday night game? I think it was Kansas City. That was that was the Detroit Washington game.
Yeah.
And so I had Baltimore and Buffalo rather over Baltimore. I did like the under in that one, and that one did not come through on the with the way that the game played out. And by the way, I'll just mention it. A lot of people are saying, well, Lamar Jackson still can't win the big one. You know what? Games are 60 minutes. You're going to have adversity at various points during the game. When you have a chance to win the game or tie the game, that's when you need to perform, and that's when Lamar Jackson performed in that final few minutes, getting the team in position to go for the 2 and get the tie. It just didn't happen, and of course the weather conditions. I think the slippery ball had a lot to do with it, both in terms of the pass and the ball, the dropping of it by Andrews. But just to say that, it's almost like saying. When they were talking about the 8 teams that were left and the number of teams with of the 8 that had quarterbacks that had won the Super Bowl. Okay. Mm-hmm. And it's nice to win, but how about teams that had quarterbacks who performed very well in Super Bowls and lost, like Jalen Hurts did in the game 2 years ago? I mean, what was it, 38-35? It came down to a kick in the final minute of the game by Kansas City to win. And by the way, I would think the NFL, given that game 2 years ago, wouldn't be surprised if that's the matchup that they want. Although, really, when you think about it, any of the 4 possible matchups, you could have the first rookie ever to start a Super Bowl if Washington wins this week. You'd have that rematch of Kansas City, with Kansas City looking to get a chance to get that record 3rd win. And then you have Buffalo with an opportunity to perhaps erase the curse that's lived with them for 30-something years and at least get their first chance since then to win a Super Bowl and possibly win the Super Bowl. Although I would think if Buffalo's in the Super Bowl, I would think they have a good chance to beat Washington, but I think Philadelphia would beat Buffalo. But we may not get to see that matchup if Kansas City wins.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I don't know if you looked at the hypothetical lines between all the matchups, but I
have not yet. But go ahead.
Do you want me to tell you, or do you not?
Let me see if I can come close, because I'm not all that good sometimes at making advanced lines. But let's go through the matchups, and I'll give you my guess.
Okay. Well, you just mentioned Bills Eagles. What do you make that?
Bills Eagles. I would make Philly. Bills Eagles. I'd make Philly 3.
Really? Okay. This is according to FanDuel. The Bills are -1.5.
I'll take the Eagles all day.
Yeah,
I'll take the Eagles all day on that one. Yeah.
Me too. Okay, it's Chiefs Eagles.
Chiefs Eagles. Well, if they're going to make 1.5, that would almost be a pick 'em.
Also, Chiefs minus
That's what I would say.
Yeah, Chiefs minus 1.5. That's what it is.
Oh, Chiefs. Okay, so you'd have Eagles minus 1.5 against. See, that's interesting. You'd have Eagles minus 1.5 against the Chiefs, against the Bills rather.
Yeah.
And you'd have the Chiefs minus 1.5 against the Eagles.
Yes.
And yet the Chiefs are the same minus 1.5 at home against the Bills.
Yeah, I guess. Well,
that's interesting.
I guess they give 1.5 points to home teams now, or I guess it's 1.5 or 2, depending on where you look. Yeah. So,
but I'm saying that Philadelphia would be a 1.5 point favorite on a neutral site, as would Kansas City, being 1.5 on a neutral site, and they're saying 1.5 at home.
Yeah. Well, yeah, both Buffalo and Kansas City would be minus 1.5 against the Philly in the neutral site. All right. So, what about Buffalo, Washington?
I might go as high. Well, they probably won't go that high. I would say Buffalo at least 3.
It's minus 4.5.
I was going to say 4, but I didn't think they would go over 3 because they normally don't. In those, we don't really see that. Well, we've seen it in the past when you've had really like dominant teams as the favorite, and maybe suspect teams as the underdog. And really, when you think about needing to win 3 or 4 games to make it to the Super Bowl, by that time, you really have a non-deserving underdog? Really, I'm not really sure. And obviously, with Washington, if they were to make it to the Super Bowl, they would have won 3 road games to make it there. So, I think that all things being, and the thing also is in that kind of matchup, you would have Buffalo's weakness, which is their defense, against Washington's weakness, which is their defense.
Yeah.
And both teams good offenses.
I will say though that the minus 4.5 is minus 115, so it's almost a minus 5.
Which isn't all that significant, by the way. 4.5 and 5.
Yeah,
Five's fairly a dead number, not as much as it used to be before the 2-point conversion.
Yeah, 9 is the only like true dead number. Although we just saw 9 in the Chiefs.
Yeah, it took a safety to get there though.
Right.
Yeah,
right,
so which is more? I'm sure 9 is probably less frequent than a safety in a game, but nonetheless, it did take that unusual play. Although I'll tell you, we saw Houston had a chance, 2 missed extra points. Jake Elliott missed 2 extra points, and Fairburn also missed a field goal in that game. So a lot of unusual numbers are now more possible, especially with the number of extra points that we continue to see being missed.
Yeah, before we get to the last one, my dad is convinced that Jake Elliott was in the take for to make sure that the Eagles did not cover the spread.
Oh.
He was very convinced.
I don't know. Has he watched Elliott much of the year?
He has. He's been critical of him. But I say this, like he said that he's like, well, bet the Eagles for me. Make sure I get 6, not 6.5. I don't want to deal with Elliott again. So
it was very prescient in that. Hope you got the -6 for him.
Yeah, I did. So we'll talk about that in a second. What about Chiefs, Redskins? What do you think of that line?
Chiefs and Redskins. Well, you said that. Well, we know that the Chiefs are 1.5 over the Bills, or -2 at home over the Bills. So maybe they Chiefs, Redskins. I might actually make that lower. I might actually make that 4.
It's also 4.5. Although it's not
Chiefs 4.
Although the vig is not juiced up. So
no juice
on the vig. Okay. So yeah, I guess they view the Bills as a little bit better than the Chiefs, because the Bills versus Eagles, as I said, is -1.5, -110. However, Chiefs over Eagles is -1.5, -106. So
okay.
It's very, very slight favorability to Buffalo there. So,
I mean, really, when you look at it, well, let's also remember that if Washington were to make the Super Bowl, regardless of the schedule they played, it's still a 12-5 football team. So it's not like a 9-8 team that gets on an unlucky run.
Yeah, and you
that's a 12-5 team that gets on a run that really by this point shouldn't surprise anybody.
Yeah, and you mentioned how the public
Yeah.
would like all the matchups. I agree. I think all of them would be appealing. It's not like a Houston snuck in there. I feel
Yeah.
like the Texans like beat the Chiefs somehow and then upset the Bills. I don't think the NFL would like that as much. It's just not much appeal there, especially with all the injuries that they've had. But yeah, I mean these Final Four teams are appealing. I'm looking forward to the games. I mean, obviously, I'm going to watch them regardless. But
Well, one thing that's interesting about this season, I didn't go back to see how often it has happened, and a lot of it does have to do with the 17 game schedule. Although it is somewhat unique. Well, no, I just realized there was one exception here, that of the 32 teams, all 14 playoff teams won 10 or more games. Okay, you don't see that even in the 17 game schedule. We've seen some 9 and 8 teams get in there, either as division winners or wild cards. The only thing that made it a little bit different than maybe totally unique is that there was one 10 win team which did not make the playoffs, and that's Seattle. And that even in the under the 16 game schedule, you still have a lot of 10 win teams. But there have been occasions where one, possibly two, but I remember of at least one instance where an 11 win team, where a 10 or I think it was maybe even 11, but certainly a 10 win team did not make the playoffs, going 10-6.
Yeah, it was in 2008. The Patriots,
Miami and the Patriots, right?
Yeah, the Patriots were 11-5 with Matt Castle.
And so you're right, and so were the Dolphins, but the Dolphins, I think, won the division on tiebreakers, and I think Baltimore and one other team had a record that got them in ahead of New England. Indianapolis, maybe.
Yeah, some would say the best coaching job that Bill Belichick has done.
I said that year after year after year that had to be his best coaching job, considering that Brady, who had already won 3 Super Bowls, was injured in the first half of the first game.
Yeah, and at the time, obviously it was impressive at the time, but I don't think we knew exactly how impressive it was because we were seeing Matt Castle. We're like, oh, okay, Bill Belichick found another gem, and then no, we saw Matt Castle in Kansas City. He was
exactly elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. So, I mean that was amazing. So, yeah, you're right. Seattle, the only team that won 10 plus games, didn't make the playoffs this year. Funny enough, their final game didn't even mean anything because the Rams already clinched the division with all those weird tiebreakers.
Dolphins. Yeah.
No, the Rams clinched the division over the.
You're talking about the Seattle.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah,
Seattle's win. Yeah. Rams had already convinced.
Right. Yeah. So their final game didn't mean anything. So, any thoughts on any of the other games before we jump into the championship games? I know you said that I don't know what Mark Lawrence said about the Eagles Rams or if that's safety, if you thought that was lucky, but.
I'm trying to find as we're doing it. I'm trying to find where that comment was. I think I remember when it was in some email. It may have been in one of his morning emails that he puts out to find out where he called out to you, or called you out. Not called you out. He commented that you had a great comment about it. So I'm going to try and find that. But a little concerning that. Buffalo was only to get 2 field goals in the second half last week after leading 21-10 at halftime. That was a little bit concerning. Was a little bit wasn't all that surprised at what happened in Philadelphia. The Rams are a good team, but I think the weather conditions. In fact, I said that Saquon Barkley could have cost the Eagles the cover, and by that I mean if he hadn't run that last touchdown in and had rather, let's say, stopped at the 30-yard line when they were in field goal territory, it would have enabled the Eagles to take more time off the clock before possibly getting at least a field goal or possibly a touchdown. And then, of course, the extra point that Elliott missed gave it a 6-point lead. So it was sort of said that jokingly because it was just amazing what Barkley was able to do, especially on that last run and in those conditions. So that was a well-played game. Maybe a little bit concerned about the protection that Hurts had with Verse having that great game in the snow and prior to the snow. And I do wonder, and by the way, the reason also was not so much that Barkley would have taken more time off the clock if he hadn't scored, but you could see that the Eagles defense was getting gassed, and I'll be interested to see how Washington attacks that this week, although the conditions may not be nearly as bad as they were last Sunday.
Yeah, I thought the conditions hurt both teams. Now, obviously, it hurt the Rams more because they couldn't run nearly as well as the Eagles. But A.J. Brown dropped that deep pass it could have been a touchdown or it would have set the Eagles up for a touchdown. Also, Jalen Hurts took the safety. He didn't see Dallas Goedert over the middle of the field, and that's been pointed out a lot. There's that picture is circulating Twitter a lot. I thought that was more of like not being able to see in the snow. It's so hard to do that. So.
By the way, I will mention that one. It almost looked as though Lamar Jackson on that fumble that was returned for a touchdown, almost like, I don't know, it slipped out of his hand, but it almost looked like, and you look at it in some angles, he almost dropped the ball, not on purpose, but it just looked like he didn't really. It looked like he didn't really try to even get a firm grasp on it on that that fumble.
Yeah, it was weird. And Jackson had 2 turnovers. And one was some miscommunication, but yeah, I mean, look, people are going to criticize Jackson. I wouldn't. I mean, he made the one big mistake with the fumble, but he had a great ending to that game.
And, well, that's what I said. That's exactly what I said. That people who criticize him say, "Hey, he did what he needed to do when the game came down to the final minutes."
Yeah, exactly. I don't. Evan and I talked about this on Tuesday with the field goal right before when they were up 5 and they kicked the field goal to go up 8 from the 2-yard line. Both Evan and I agreed that we would have gone for it because you go from 5 to 8 with the field goal, sure.
Yeah, if you miss it, they're 98 yards away.
Exactly,
90-something yards away. Yeah,
exactly. You advanced Baltimore 28 yards, and like they don't win with the touchdown, and but they do tie with the touchdown and the 2. So yeah, I thought that, and something I said is like I sometimes wonder what the other team is thinking. Like if I'm the Ravens, what do I want Buffalo to do? And I would not want Buffalo to go for it. I would be like if I were the Ravens, I was relieved when the Bills were kicking that field goal.
Yeah, it was a debatable decision because of the weather. Although Baltimore had been able to move the ball throughout the second half once the snow started, so I could not really criticize the decision because if you're what the risk versus reward, and usually when I criticize coaches, it's because the risk is much greater than the potential reward. I'm not necessarily sure of that in this situation, simply because if you make the field goal, you're up by 2 scores, and the other team has to come down and get a touchdown and a 2-point conversion just to tie the game. If you miss the field goal, they still need a touchdown, but then they only need an extra point. The concern was that when you take a look at it, because Baltimore had been having success, maybe you had to figure that they felt, and then of course the conditions had a lot to do with it too, but from the 2-yard line, you'd have to think that, it's a field goal is like what an extra point used to be from that situation. And it was probably, a 90 to 95% certainty or probability that you would get it being that close, making, even making adjustment for the win, as opposed to the risk of missing the touchdown. Because Baltimore had some success. It's not as easy to do the tush push in the A in the snow and B from 2 yards out, but nonetheless, if you gave back those 20 yards or whatever that you would give them in field position on the missed field goal, that they'd still have to go down and get a touchdown. And again, in these slippery conditions, although they were able to show it, you still have to execute the play, and it's a lot more difficult to execute the play on offense in those kind of conditions than on a normal dry field.
Yeah, I don't know why they didn't tush push twice. 3rd down, maybe they get to the 1, and then it's much easier to do it from the 1. But but the Bills won, so I
don't remember. Did they line up in push tush formation or not?
No, I think Allen was in shotgun, so he took it was a quarterback draw that they took out the middle. He just got hit at the line of scrimmage, so. Yeah, I thought that was a misstep by the Bills, but it ended up working out just fine. But I think it was a mistake. And
because I by the way, I think Baltimore would have won if the game goes overtime.
Yeah, well, although the Bills, if the Ravens get the 2, then the Bills at least have one more drive. But it's not guaranteed. Like I've had so many Bills fans respond to me when I said I disagree with the field goal on Twitter. They're like, well, we would have had the ball anyway with the final drive. I'm like, well, what if you didn't score? Then Baltimore would have the ball. So I don't know. I thought it was a mistake, but like I said, it worked out for them. So I figure we can get into the games now. We have one comment from Patrick. He says, do any of the other sports betting sites offer free DFS? Bet365 does routinely get free bonus bets. So DraftKings does have free contests, and I think FanDuel does as well. Right now, for this weekend's games, they have a contest that pays out. Actually, they have two contests. One is they're both free. One pays out $500 the first. The other pays out $250 the first, plus a $100 DoorDash gift card. So there's some free advertising for DraftKings, but it's these contests are free, so they don't cost anything. So you might as well do them. I always just enter them. Like I make lineups. I enter them in like in the cash contest, and then I just throw these lineups into the free contest, just in case. And I mean, they do pay out other like otherwise. Like if you finish, for example, if you finish in 100th place, you get $5, which is like not great, but it's still it's free. So like it's an extra $5 if you get that high. So yeah, and like I said, I think FanDuel does as well. Ether says Chiefs Commanders Super Bowl night reignite. It might reignite the conversation to bring back the Redskins name, and I'm here for it.
I like that. I haven't heard that before, but yes, I think that would be great.
I think that would work as well, and I'm sure Tom he loves when two similar team names combine for a game, like he called the Colts Broncos the Battle of the Horses. This might be the battle of the indigenous people. So
there's a tiger. Well, it'd be lions and Bengals, maybe.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, battle of the cats. Yeah, that gift card is mine. Good luck, Cassandra. John says it was the right call. The Ravens would have had to complete 4 different things to win: drive for a touchdown, make it 2, stop the Bills driving down the field to win it.
Yeah,
I get it. Look, I get it. And then win in overtime. These conditions would have been really tough to do all 4. Look, yeah, that's true. They didn't get the 2, but you just win the game with 2 yards. And
yeah, you do. You're a huge favorite to win the game if you get it. But I'd still prefer a relatively high percentage chance of success for being up by 8, because then there's some pressure on your defense, but there's even greater pressure on the Ravens offense as far as going down there, because yeah, that was absolutely right. They have to do those things to win, but the first thing that Baltimore has to do is first, and we don't know how much time it would take up to score a touchdown. It'd be different if they had to go for a touchdown and then an extra point, to tie. Here they needed to get the 2-point conversions. They had a success on 2 plays. So again, I would not have been totally against going for it and failing, because of the fact that you'd have to go 98, 99 yards to get that touchdown, albeit the reward for that would be giving them the lead outright.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. Let's get into Sunday's games. So first one is Redskins at Eagles. It's 3:00. The Eagles they opened at -4.5. They're up to -6. I've seen some 6.5s out there. I was eager to look at the injury reports, because Jalen Hurts, obviously big question mark with the leg injury that he suffered against the Rams in the second half. He was limited on Wednesday, but he was full today. And I said that if Jalen Hurts is full, I was going to lock this in. And so I just saw it. And so I'm going to lock this in after the show. I love the Eagles in this game. I think this is the easiest of the 2 games to handicap. I think this is pretty simple. I mean, the people just saw the Redskins play their A+ game against the Lions playing their D game. Like that was a horrible performance by Detroit. Like easily the worst performance of the year, aside from maybe the first half of Houston. And so people are thinking, people are backing the Redskins. They're thinking that the Redskins will do the same thing once again. And I don't know if they can. I mean, of course they can. I just don't think it's very likely that they will. And I think people are quick to forget that the week before they would have lost to Tampa if Baker Mayfield doesn't lose a fumble trying to hand the ball off to Jalen McMillan. And also Graham Barton botched the snap on the next drive. So if either of those 2 things doesn't happen, Tampa wins. Washington's not even here. In week 18, Washington had trouble beating Dallas with Trey Lance, the quarterback. And I know that wasn't like a big motivational game, but they still had issues putting Dallas away. Week 17, Atlanta went to overtime in Washington. So it's not like this Washington team is great or anything. They're good, but I think they are a clear step below the other 3 teams in the Final 4 here. And we saw the 2 matchups this year.
By the way, excuse me. That's reflected in the Super Bowl odds. I think Philly is +190, Kansas City's +200, Buffalo's plus 260, and Commanders are like 9-1, 8-1, 9-1.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, the Eagles have the easiest road to the Super Bowl. So, makes a lot of sense. The two matchups this year, you had Eagles basically dominating the first game. They were up by 2 touchdowns. They ended up winning by 8, but there was a late touchdown drive by Jane Daniels. He really struggled otherwise in that game. The second game, the Eagles were up by 2 touchdowns on multiple occasions, even though Jalen Hurts.
They were up 21-0 first quarter, as I recall.
Yep. Yeah, and then they were up by 2 touchdowns late in the game,
and that's when Hurts got hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
Early.
Hurts got concussed in that game, and it was Kenny Pickett the rest of the way. He was not good, and even still, the Eagles would have won that game if Devontae Smith doesn't drop the ball on 4th down, or the final play of that drive. So Washington was very lucky to win that game, and just look at the Eagles this year. They've lost 3 games. The first loss was when Saquon Barkley dropped the ball on Monday night, and then Atlanta drove the field and won. The second loss was against Tampa, where everyone is out, so don't really count that one. And the third one was just the one I just talked about with Washington. So this team, he really hasn't been beaten yet. I don't think. And in the Atlanta game, the first Atlanta game, AJ Brown wasn't there. So I think the Eagles are definitely head and shoulders above Washington here. I love the -6. I will be betting this, like I said, after the show. So I'm curious to hear what you have on this game.
Well, the first concern, and I know he practiced, but we still don't know how fully healthy Hurts is, because if he gets knocked out, backup quarterback advantage goes to Washington with Mariota against either McKee or Pickett. So you have to hope that does not happen. Now, as far by the way, I don't know if you saw it, and I'm trying to find it somewhere. I do the podcast with Mark Lawrence every week, and we did it on Wednesday. It's available on his website right now. But one of the participants, Victor King, brought up, and maybe you saw it somewhere, the remarkable relationship or similarities between this year's Commanders team and the Cincinnati team that made it to the Super Bowl a few years ago. I think they ended up losing that game, beginning with the fact that both teams had won 4 games the season before. But more significantly, both teams were led by Heisman Trophy winning LSU quarterbacks. And there are about 6 or 7 other amazing comparisons between the two. Now, of course, you could say that, Cincinnati lost that Super Bowl, but it's still it's just one of those things to kick around where you go, that's kind of interesting. But as far as this game goes, Philadelphia, they ran for 200 yards, over 200 yards in both meetings, okay? The game at home that they won 26-18 and the game they lost 36-33. What's interesting in the second game is that with Hurts being out early in that game, he did not pose a threat to improve the Philadelphia running game as when he's healthy and in there for a full 60 minutes. And yet they still managed over 200 yards against that Washington defense, and Barkley had 150 of those yards. So, if Washington couldn't contain Barkley and the Eagles running the football when they didn't have to fear Hurts running the ball, now that he's back in there and assuming he stays healthy, what's going to change as far as that's concerned. So, I do like Philadelphia in this game. Initially, I was thinking about Washington simply because they are the hot team, and they don't know they're not supposed to win. They think, hey, this is a special year for us. We've seen it from other teams in the past that got on that magical run and ended up winning the Super Bowl, or certainly making it to the Super Bowl. That's the mindset that Washington has. Jaden Daniels, he's no longer a rookie quarterback. He's an experienced quarterback that led his team to 12 wins this year and 2 more in the playoffs, both of which were on the road. So and they've got a veteran coach in Dan Quinn, although his previous Super Bowl coaching experience was not the best, but a lot of that you can blame on the offensive coordinator there, some guy by the name of Shanahan, I believe, who proved that the Atlanta collapse was not a fluke. Nonetheless, there were a lot of things to like about Philadelphia. They do have the ability to move the ball against Washington. Notwithstanding the first meeting, this is still an outstanding defense. They led the NFL in yards per game, passing 179, 180, I believe it was, which, by the way, that average was still more than the yards that the Eagles gained in both meetings against Washington because of the fact that they were able to run the ball for over 200 yards. So they didn't really need a big game out of Jalen Hurts. However, with Brown, Smith, and Goddard, Philadelphia's got some pretty good receivers that if they need to pass the ball or when they decide to pass the ball, they've got some competent pass receivers. So that's another thing I do like about the Eagles. And then you've got the situation with what the game plan should be. If I'm Washington, I'm going to try to make the Eagles beat me with Hurts passing the ball successfully. I'm not sure that they'll be able to do that all that much because, again, of Hurts' threat with his legs and his ability when he's running around and they're putting pressure on him, one of those receivers is going to be open, and Hurts has shown that he can get the ball there. At the same time, I think Philadelphia will do what it does best, and that is run the football. And when you run the football, your defense stays off the field. That's kind of like what I said with the Barkley touchdown against the Rams. Boom, 62-yard run or whatever it was. Well, the defense is right back on the field. Here, the Eagle defense won't have to get as tired if the Eagles are successful against Washington, and of course the game being at home. Washington did not play as difficult a schedule as Philadelphia did, but I don't think that matters. This is a confident team. They've won 7 games in a row, regardless of how they've won them or the situations. I will say that even with Hurts out, and the concern is that was an important game for Washington to win the 36-33 game. It was also not as important, but a win by Philadelphia would have wrapped up the division title in that game, leaving no uncertainty about who's going to win the game. And we didn't know what at the time, but that might have cost Philadelphia the number 1 seed. So it was an important game for Philadelphia. And I was concerned about the fact that they didn't lose that game really because of the absence of Hurts. When your defense gives up 36 points and can't protect the lead in the final minutes, that's a little bit concerning. However, I agree with you. That game is more of an outlier compared to what Philadelphia did the entire season. So this is not a play necessarily against Washington because of the defense. It's a play on Philadelphia, but there are some concerns about Washington. I'd like to see how this game unfolds. I've got Philadelphia winning the game 33-24. So I do like Philadelphia, but I'm a little bit stronger on the over.
Okay. Like I said, my only worry was Jalen Hurts' injury, but he practiced fully today. It doesn't quite mean that he's going to be 100%. We've seen in the past some sketchy injury reports. I kind of remember the Bengals early last year when Joe Burrow was dealing with a calf injury, and he was listed as full all week, and then he could barely move, and I was so pissed about that. But I did want to see Hurts full in practice, like I said before, I locked it in, and I did not want to see him miss any practice. He has not missed any practice, and so him being full, I think, it's better than the alternative. So I'm comfortable betting the Eagles right now. I just hope that he's close to 100%. The injury report, otherwise, a couple of notes here. For the Redskins, Daron Payne and Bobby Wagner were both DNP for 2 days. For the Eagles, Dallas Goedert and Cam Jurgens both DNP. So the 2 key players for both teams have not practiced yet. We'll see what happens on Friday. Obviously, they could just return to practice and be fine. But that's definitely something to watch out for. You mentioned Goddard as far as the Eagles' weapons. I do like Calcaterra, the other Eagle tight end. So if Goddard's out, that's not going to affect my handicap at all.
No, only the experience that he gives them.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we agree on the first game. Let's see if we agree on the second game. The second game is Buffalo, Kansas City. This line is either Chiefs -1.5 or 2, depending on where you look. It opened -1.5, so there is public money on the underdog as well in this game, and this is another instance where it's moving up, although not nearly as drastically as the Eagles.
By the way, let's talk first about the line for that game. It seems almost as strange as the Buffalo-Baltimore game, the line before. Why would you open this game? Now, let me see if I can call it up as we're speaking here. The first line I saw come out was Westgate, which had, let me see, I think they had Kansas City a 1.5-point favorite. Circa, which opened the game about 20 minutes later, I believe, opened the game at Pick'em. And immediately the line went to -1.5, -2 around town. I was surprised that game opened as low as it did, realizing Kansas City, they were 11-0 in one-score games this year. 5 of the wins were by 3 points or less. A 6th win was by Tampa Bay it was against Tampa Bay in overtime. As I recall, I think that was 30-24, if I remember, something like that. So they have won a lot of close games. But even so, you're playing on your home field. You're the 2-time defending Super Bowl champion. Yes, you lost to Buffalo earlier in the regular season, just like you lost to Buffalo earlier in the regular season 3 times when you beat them 3 times in the playoffs, okay? Because that was Buffalo's 4th straight regular season win over the Chiefs. And now, of course, you're meeting them in the playoffs again, where you've had success, as I just mentioned. So I was surprised. I would have thought that line might have opened 2.5, not 3, because I think at 3 you'd see some money on Buffalo, but at 2.5 it might sit there for a while until you might see some bets up to 3. I think the line would more likely hit 3 than 2.5 throughout the week. I don't know where it would end up, but I was surprised that line opened under 2.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't.
By the way, excuse me, one thing. If you ran the stats, you could make a case for Buffalo being the favorite in that game, just on the raw numbers without consideration of anything else, because they do have some very good numbers. But when you factor in the intangibles, the experience, etc., I just couldn't understand why that line didn't open -2.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. It certainly should not be 3. Like you said, I think a lot of sharp money would come in on Buffalo at that point. It would drive the line down like almost instantly to 2.5. So I think that at least is correct. But yeah, I mean, look, I think 1.5 or 2 is, I think it's fine. John's saying it probably opened because they didn't look great against the Texans. The Texans were viewed as a borderline playoff team going in. Although I guess anyone who thought that didn't hear my 2008 Arizona Cardinals.
Oh, but by the way, Buffalo didn't look all that great against Baltimore after getting out to that big lead.
That's true. The second half, they did flounder a little bit with those 2 field goals, as you said. They had a nice lead to start, and I almost bet Baltimore at halftime when it was 21-10, and I thought that because Buffalo had the ball first in the third quarter, I thought if Buffalo scored a touchdown or at least a field goal, I think I definitely would have bet Baltimore, and so I was counting on that. But obviously Buffalo, they just went 3 and out right away, so it didn't even end up mattering. So. I did not middle the game. Evan kind of chided me for that. He's like, "How could you not bet Baltimore +8?" Because he has such a big bet on Buffalo. I was waiting for a better number. I thought like if Buffalo scored again and to open the third quarter, we could have gotten like +10.5 or something. So that's what I was waiting on. So it never materialized, but it didn't end up mattering. All right, so for this game. Like I said before, I thought that the first game was a much easier handicap. This one is a lot tougher because I view these teams as pretty even. I think the Bills are a very tiny bit better than the Chiefs, so it doesn't really matter at this point. With the Chiefs at -2. What I do like for Buffalo here are the 2 They're 2 big matchup edges, I think, in their favor in this game. One is their pass rush, their edge rush against Kansas City's tackles. Kansas City's tackles are terrible. Patrick Mahomes was harassed a lot last week. The Chiefs only had 212 yards of offense. Their tackles can't block, and that's a big problem. And it ended up costing the Chiefs in the Super Bowl against Tampa Bay. I think it might end up costing them at some point, if not this week, then 2 weeks later against the Eagles. They can't block. So I think the Bills will be able to get a lot of pressure on Mahomes. And obviously Mahomes is going to do what he can. He's going to make some great plays. But I think it'll also lead to some inconsistent drives. So I think that's one big edge Buffalo has. The other edge, I think, is that Kansas City has issues against mobile quarterbacks. Against Josh Allen in the first matchup, he rushed for about 60 rushing yards. Against Baltimore in week 1, Lamar Jackson ran for 122 rushing yards. So the Chiefs have issues with these mobile quarterbacks. Obviously, Josh Allen's a mobile quarterback. So I think that's definitely a big edge for Buffalo. I really don't see any big edges for the Chiefs, like maybe Xavier Worthy against the Bills, who can't stop slot receivers, but that's about it. I mean, Taylor Rapp also, their safety for the Bills, is he was DMP twice, so he's going to be out. So, but I just don't think the Chiefs have the receivers to take advantage of that. So I like Buffalo here, but my worry, I have 2 worries here. One is that you have Patrick Mahomes basically a pick'em, and so I feel like if I bet Buffalo, I just watch Mahomes win as usual. Now I feel like an idiot for taking Buffalo. And the second thing is that you have to worry about the officiating. The officiating has always favored the Chiefs in the playoffs. You can read all about the stats. It's definitely true. They get most of the calls. They did last week, and I think they could again. Although I know that someone brought up on Tuesday that Khalid Lakeman, the official for this game, doesn't have a good record with the Chiefs, but still, it could still happen. So this is a much tougher game for me. I'm on Buffalo, but I could definitely bet and be convinced to take the other side. So who do you like in this game?
I went back and forth on this one because all the points you made are ones that I considered and are valid points. Let me put it how I wrote it up, because you mentioned everything that I was going to come up with, maybe without some of the specifics. Both Allen and Mahomes have been full-time starters since 2018. Both are in the prime of their careers, perhaps not even reaching their peak yet. There's a lot of sentiment for the Bills to finally make it back to the Super Bowl, much less win it. The old saying is to be the champ, you have to beat the champ, and that's what Buffalo has a chance to do to get one step closer to that first Super Bowl win. Although the Chiefs have struggled, they still find a way to win. The Bills may have gotten a second life last week with their win over the Ravens that easily could have been a loss in overtime, but for the drop pass on Baltimore's 2-point conversion. Yet Buffalo, as I mentioned earlier, had a double-digit lead, 21-10, but could manage only those 2 field goals after recess. The champs, Kansas City, might be staggering, but until they get knocked out, I'm compelled to back them, especially at home. It might be a go-ahead touchdown that wins it, or a late field goal to extend the 1-point lead. I've got Kansas City winning the game 24-20, though I could certainly see, and actually from a non-wagering standpoint, I'm hoping Buffalo wins because I've got some nice future tickets on Buffalo in the Super Bowl against Philly and now the Commanders. The key for me is I look at strength versus strength. And to me, the strength versus strength is the Buffalo offense against the Kansas City defense. And then I look at weakness versus supposed weakness. And I think the weakness for Buffalo is their defense, but the offense for Kansas City is basically an average offense. When you look at the yards gained, when you look at their points scored, their points scored, I think, let me see, I have the number here. I think it's 22.8 or something like that, and the league average is like 22.2. So basically, they're scoring at the league average. Now, this Kansas City team offensively is weaker than the teams of the past few years. Last year, they scored, I think, about a touchdown less. The last 2 years, they scored about 30 and 29 points. So the last 3 years are about a touchdown better than what they've scored this year. Now, defensively, their points is pretty much on line. It's close to what they did last year, maybe about a field goal less. I think they allowed 14 something this year and 17 last year. But the 17 last year was about 5 points less than they had averaged allowing the last couple of years. So what the perception is about Kansas City, that the offense is weaker but the defense is stronger, really holds true. But again, you just have a way. Kansas City has a knack of making those big plays. They have the experience. They have the confidence that they can do it. They have the confidence that they can come from behind. Buffalo has to be concerned that if they get a lead, can they protect that lead as they hadn't been able to do in previous opportunities? They were able to protect it in the regular season, but that's the regular season. It's not a strong opinion on this game. I had to make an opinion on it. I do prefer Kansas City, but I also prefer the under, because if Kansas City has, I don't know how much Buffalo will score against Kansas City's defense, but I do know that if Kansas City if Buffalo's defense is able to contain Kansas City, Buffalo might win the game, but I think that game would stay under.
Yeah, that makes sense. John talking about Bills have some starters in question. Rapp probably won't go. Yeah, I mentioned him. Milano, Taron Johnson, and Benford will probably go, but I checked the injury report tomorrow. And look, if Matt Milano's out, that is a huge loss. He was limited twice so far this week. I assume he's going to play, but if he's a surprise inactive, I might change my opinion on the game. for sure. And Benford obviously is a big factor as well. Taron Johnson too. So those guys definitely meaningful there. John also saying Texas defensive ends a lot better than the Bills. Definitely true. But the Bills are 10th in pressure rate, so like they do get to the quarterback quite often. So I still think that that's a big advantage for them against the Chiefs. So. I like I said, I think the Bills have the matchup edges in this game, and I think they're slightly a little bit better than Kansas City. So that's why I'm picking them. But like you said, Andy, it's Patrick Mahomes and Arrowhead in a playoff game, and I'm not going to bet this game. At least not before the game starts. Maybe I'll bet it live or something. But
yeah, we'll probably get a feel early in the game how we don't know how it'll play out, but is Buffalo up to the moment? Are they perhaps not overly aggressive, but are they confident when in their first two possessions? Are they able to? And I'll especially be looking at what Buffalo is able to do defensively against Kansas City. I mean, you talked about the game against Houston. That was some fortunate pass that Mahomes completed to Kelsey for that touchdown.
That's true. Yeah, and I do have a big future on the Eagles to win the Super Bowl. So. I would like to. I don't know. I don't need to really do anything here. I can. What my plan is, if it is Bills Eagles or Chiefs Eagles, to bet to bet an alt line like Eagles Chiefs plus 3.5, Bills plus 3.5, and try to middle. That's gonna be my plan. I do have a lot of bonus bets though on both teams, so. I guess that's the sort of middle, but for the site.
I actually have a 90-1 future on Philadelphia over Buffalo in the Super Bowl. I played that over at Circa back in August. Now I do have some nice odds for a Chiefs-Eagles matchup. I played Bills over. I did not play Bills over Eagles early, but I was able to play it during the season. But I did play earlier in the season, before the season started, the back and forth on Chiefs and Eagles. So the only one that can upset me is the Commanders winning outright.
Yeah, I have nothing on them either. You said Bills over Eagles, or was it Eagles over Bills? What was it?
Let me see here. Eagles defeat Bills.
Eagles defeat Bills.
It's the 90-1. Let me see what I forget what I had. I got the ticket elsewhere on Bills over Eagles because I played that mid-season when they had it. Eagles over Chiefs is 59-1. Chiefs over Eagles is 35-1. So
that's awesome. that's great.
What I do, I've been doing it the last couple of years that they've offered the exactas. A lot of these places that did, and there weren't that many, would offer the exacta once the playoff field was set. So you'd have the 14 teams and they'd have all the possible combinations, which is still a lot, but now they did it for all 32 teams. So what I did before the season was I picked out 3 teams in the AFC and 3 teams in the in each conference. In the NFC, I had San Francisco, the Eagles, and the Lions. In the AFC, I had the Bengals, the Bills, the Chiefs, and a little bit on the Ravens.
Okay.
But I did not do the Ravens over the Eagles or the Bills over the Eagles.
Okay. I like that strategy
until middle of the season.
Right.
Or early mid-October, I think it was.
I like that strategy a lot. I think I might steal it from you next year. just a different site. That's awesome. I think that's great. It's such a shame for that strategy that Detroit laid an egg last week, because you'd be sitting pretty with the two. I mean, basically all 4 teams. You'd have you were the mix and match all 4 teams.
Yeah, the only one. I did because I did have I did have Eagles and Lions both ways.
Okay, so
the one that I thought was actually going to come up, the one that I don't remember what the odds were. It was in that neighborhood there, but I thought the Super Bowl would be Cincinnati and Detroit. I just like both of those teams coming into the season, and of course, the game that disappointed me was that big game with Cincinnati. I forget which one it was. It was Cincinnati? Maybe it was Cincinnati-Pittsburgh. I think that effectively said Cincinnati's season is over. They still had a chance, but they needed help late, and they didn't get that help.
Yeah, that was the game Russell Wilson went insane in the second half. He had like 414 passing yards. It just showed how bad Cincinnati's defense was. But I do like the strategy. So are you going to hedge with Washington at all? Like, are you going to take Washington +6 to kind of hedge these?
I might do that. I've done a little bit of a hedge with Washington with some of those exactas. I think right now, Washington. I was deciding how I want to do it. You can still get Washington at 9-1 to win the Super Bowl, but I think I did the exact. I don't remember exactly what I did with the hedge against Washington against both Kansas City and Buffalo. They were both in the teens.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause I feel like with Washington +6, you could middle there. Like if the
Yeah.
Eagles win by 3, like you're going to win both bets. Or
I almost went that way until I did the closer look and saw that, you know, just the fact. I think maybe the key thing that got me finally on Philadelphia, because I was going back and forth, but it was the fact that in that game that Washington won, they still could not stop Barkley with Hurts being out.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, Washington, their run defense by far the worst of these 4 teams. And we just saw Barkley rush for 204 yards against the Rams. The Rams were 8th in run defense EPA.
Yeah.
Redskins are 20th. So good luck trying to stop Barkley. I don't think it's going to work out for them.
Plus, by the way, that game was in Washington, the one that they won. So now, you know, you're going to have, again, how much does a hostile crowd matter? Well, maybe it does when you're calling signals out. I'm expecting the Eagles to put a lot of pressure on Daniels.
Yeah, especially with Sam Cosmi. We didn't mention him. Washington's best offensive lineman is not going to be there. Sam Cosmi is a great interior blocker, and by the way, guess who is in the interior for the Eagles? It's Jalen Carter. So
yeah,
that's another big mismatch in Philadelphia's favor. I don't know if you saw the rushing yard props on Saquon Barkley. I think it's the highest it's ever been for the playoffs, which is 125.5. As high as that is, I still would, if I had to pick one over or under, I would pick over.
I would think so, unless they fall behind and they have to start passing a little bit more than they would like to.
Yeah, that's sure. That could always happen. But like I said, if I had to choose one, I would think over. I'm not going to bet it, but gun to my head, pick one. I would say over. Did you have any eyes on any props for these 2 games? I know that.
I haven't really looked at the props for these because I was busy trying to just analyze which side I liked in the game. I might do something over the next few days. Normally, I reserve my props for the Super Bowl, where I have much more time to go through the myriad of props that they have and come up with some ones that I find that I really like. But with a relatively short period to take a look at the props, even though there's only 2 games to take a look at, these are the ones that I have a lot more invested in as far as the outcomes go.
Yeah, I'll be posting the props either tonight or tomorrow morning. I'm running on 2 hours of sleep, by the way, because our water heater burst. Yeah, water heater burst. And so I set an appointment for 10 a.m. this morning, thinking I could, hey, maybe I'll sleep 3 or 4 hours because I go to bed at 6. And I got a call at 8 a.m. from the water heater company. They're like, "Hey, I'm here 2 hours early. Are you at the door?" I'm like, "Oh my god!" They come in. So I had like an hour and a half of sleep, and so I ended up taking like an hour long nap, but it was pretty brutal. But anyway, I like I said, so either tonight or tomorrow with the props. As far as something in the other game, I mentioned this on Tuesday. I love Dalton Kincaid over receiving yards. The number for that, I'm going to pull up in a second. The reason I love it is because Kansas City has been utterly awful against tight ends this year. Even against Dawson Knox in the first game when Kincaid was out, Dawson Knox had 40 receiving yards, which is higher than this prop. Dalton Kincaid's over under receiving yards is 32.5, which seems very doable. I like that a lot. So that's probably going to be my main prop for the second game. For the first one, I'm not quite sure. I'm going to go with it could end up being Barkley, actually. I don't know, because Washington's so bad against the run, but we'll see. I'll break it down, and I'll have the same game parlay and stuff like that on the site. We had a question about the weather, which I pulled up.
By the way, I was just going to say that maybe you look at some of the overpassing yard propositions for the Eagles.
Okay.
I haven't looked at them, but that might be something, again, for Washington's game plan, because you have to believe they're going to be totally focused on stopping Barkley and forcing Hurts to pass.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they could just go play action a bunch of times and get there. Jalen Hurts' passing yards prop is very low, 179.5. Again, that seems very doable. I kind of wonder how often that's hit this year, which I'll pull up right now. So Jalen Hurts is in the two playoff games. Actually, he's gone 128 and 131, so he hasn't hit that in the playoffs. But before that, so he's had 209, 290, 108, 118, 179, 221, 202, 230, 236. 114, 264, 158, 311, 183, 278. So looks like about 2/3 of the time or 3/4 of the time he's gone over that number. So I mean, it seems I would go over as well. I think you're onto something there. I think AJ Brown's interesting because he's gotten blanked the past two games. We saw Mike Evans have a great game against Washington in the opening round of the playoffs, and AJ Brown, that number is so low, 61.5. Like
what did he do in the first two games against Washington? And that would include the one where Pickett was basically the quarterback too.
The Pickett game, I know he had a huge game. He went 8 for 97 and a touchdown in that second game. In the first game, he went 5 for 65. So that hits over both times. Here, 61.5. Like I said, that's very low for AJ Brown. Usually when you see AJ Brown, his receiving yards props is usually like around the 80s, like low 80s or something. 61.5 is very low. I think that's really interesting. But again, 10 yards in the first game, 14 in the second game. I can understand why it's low, but buy low, sell high. I think that's where you're going here with AJ Brown. Like I was saying before, someone asked about the weather. The weather looks good. It's 38 and partly cloudy in the first game, 12-mile-an-hour wind, so not a huge deal, although Jake Elliott might miss some extra points. And then 32 and clear in the second game, no wind at all. So looks pretty good. No snow, no crazy winds, no rain. Should be good football, and I'm looking forward to it. So, Andy, I know you have to get going. I know you have an appointment coming up. So
yeah, I still have a little bit of time, but sure.
Okay. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to touch on before you head out?
No, I was just pretty much agreeing with the weather forecast as far as that. I like to see these teams play in the best possible conditions to get a true assessment of how these teams play. I mean, clearly, Philadelphia, Kansas City have the most experience of the four teams. But I did make the comment. In fact, let me see if I can find where I wrote it. I wasn't able to find the Walter Football comment from Mark, but I may share that with you a little bit later.
I've been eager to find that the whole time. I don't know.
Yeah, I've been trying for it. Okay, let me see here. What did I say here? Okay, the Chiefs are only the fourth team to make it to 3 straight Super Bowls, as Buffalo, New England, and Miami have done so before, but only the Pats managed to win twice out of the 3 appearances, and Buffalo, of course, didn't win any of the 4. All those playoff games take a toll, and I looked back and I said, I saw since 2020, the 2020 season, and including this season, the Chiefs have played 14 playoff games, nearly an additional season, going 12-2 straight up. Buffalo's close behind, going 7-4 in 11 playoff games since 2020. So that experience could also take a toll. But I think any toll that it would take is more than compensated for by the experience edge, because the rosters do change, and the 2 key components, Allen and Mahomes, have been there for all of those games. So that's one of the things I do like about those 2 home teams. Again, I would not be surprised if Buffalo beat Kansas City. I wouldn't be shocked if Washington beats Philadelphia. You could say, well, look, they were on a roll. They were playing well. They have been using the disrespected card really throughout much of the season. So I wouldn't be shocked. I'd be surprised, but not shocked. But I don't expect that to happen. I hope it doesn't happen, because all things being considered, I'd love to see Buffalo in there. But knowing what we had 2 years ago with Kansas City and Philly, with these 2 same quarterbacks and a lot of the key personnel intact, some differences, of course, that it could be another very entertaining Super Bowl. And the NFL is all about eyeballs and run and ad time and that. Yep. Not that I'm saying anything it would be going on there, but I just think that they would certainly love to see it from an aesthetic standpoint.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think any Eagles, Chiefs, Eagles, Bills, I think that's what the NFL would prefer. But Jay Daniels does bring a lot of excitement, and he is the future of the NFL. I know Mahomes is still under 30, and so is Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts as well. But Jane Daniels is a rookie, and I mean, his potential is just through the roof. I'm excited to see what Washington does next year when they can they're going to have a quarterback under a rookie contract. Like they'll be able to add some more defensive pieces, get better against the run, maybe add a tackle. Their tackles are not very good, and get Jane Daniels the number 2 receiver. They're going to have I assume they're going to have the cap space. I didn't look that up, but they should be able to do that, and this could be a very.
They are going to be the team next year, as far as favoritism goes, that the Lions were coming into this season.
Yeah, I'm gonna put this on the screen now. This is terrifying if you are scared of the Redskins. They are 3rd in cap space. They're in the Final Four. The other
87 million, huh?
87 million. They're gonna have a lot of money to spend with this rookie contract for Jane Daniels. That is terrifying. Like they're gonna be able to build just a mega roster and dominate as long as Jane Daniels stays healthy, of course. That's what you're looking at here. The other teams in the Final Four, by the way, Eagles 18 million, which is fine. Chiefs 11 million. Bills, where are the Bills? They are 6 million over projected. It just shows the disparity there. Like right now, the Redskins, like I said, they are a clear step below the other 3 teams. Next year, that's not going to be the case. As long as they don't make stupid moves, they're going to be able to maybe be the best team in the NFL.
What's that 5th team? Is that the Bears in black that you showed there?
Yeah, the Bears in black.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're really taking a look at the Commanders as far as the playoff teams. They're the top playoff team that has the most cap space, and the Chargers a little bit behind that.
Chargers right there. Lions 46 million, not too bad.
Yeah.
And then you have the Rams.
That's almost half of the Commanders.
Yeah.
46-87.
Yeah. As long as they don't bungle these moves, and they don't pull a Jaguars and sign Gabe Davis to a $40 million contract, like they'll be able to like if they add T. Higgins, for example. How scary would that offense be with Higgins, McLaurin, Daniels? It's Eckler and Robson out of the backfield.
If they can show up that defense, even with 1 or 2 additions, that'll make them. We don't know what's going to happen with Dallas, but Prescott's another year older, another year closer to a career-ending injury or something. The Giants are a mess. Philadelphia figures to still be strong, but let's see what free agency does to them in the offseason. I would not. How Dallas and the Eagles were close to being the favorites this year. I think Dallas and the Commanders and the Eagles might be the top 2 teams in that division next year, with a bit of a gap between those 2, the Giants, and then to the Cowboys, and then the Giants.
Well, the Cowboys are giving Brian Schottenheimer 5-hour interviews, so I don't quite understand what they're doing. Schottenheimer hasn't even called the plays the past 2 years for Dallas.
Yeah.
I don't. They're just a complete mess, and cap space wise, they're projected to be over
near the bottom, aren't they?
Yeah.
There they are. 29.
Yep. 285,000 over.
Wow.
Yeah. Look at the Saints, 52 million over.
Yeah.
they're so bad.
I'll make my prediction for coaches. I don't know that I'm going to be right or even close to right, but I think some of them are going to happen. I would not be surprised to see Pete Carroll with the Raiders. I would not be surprised to see Joe Brady with the Saints, considering his LSU ties, if he leaves Buffalo. Yeah. I wonder what the departure of Glenn and Johnson will do for the Lions.
Yeah. I mean, look at the Eagles after the year after they went to the Super Bowl. They struggled. They struggled last year. They had 2 new coordinators. Well,
they had 2 new coordinators last year after the Super Bowl game, and then 2 new ones this year.
Yeah, well, they got 2 good ones, so it really obviously depends on who they get to coordinate the offense and defenses. But if they pull an Eagles and take it likely, I've said this before on the show a while ago, so I'll say it again. Before that season, I live in Philly or around Philly at least.
Right.
Before that season, I was saying, like, people always ask me, like, oh, what do you think about the Eagles? Whenever I meet anyone I haven't seen in a while, they're like, what do you think about the Eagles? Before that year, I said, I think they're going to be a good team, but I don't think they're going to get back to the Super Bowl because of the 2 new coordinators. I don't think they're very good. And everyone, like 9 out of 10 people would always respond, who cares about coordinators?
They don't bet. They don't bet, and they don't analyze football.
They did not. No, those people did not bet. The people who agreed with me were the bettors. The people who disagreed with me, they were just the casual fans, and
Yeah.
I think they learned their lesson, how much the coordinators matter, because Kellen Moore and Vic Fangio have done so well.
And I wonder if those same people that you ran into last year and said, "Oh, coordinators don't matter," and they bet the Eagles anyway, and then the Eagles have 2 new coordinators this year, and now they remember your advice from last year.
Yeah,
Coordinators do matter. Oh,
you know what? The same people were more pessimistic about the Eagles this year than they were last year, because they just saw the Eagles struggle at the end of the season.
right.
I'm like,
at the end of the season.
they added two far better coordinators, and they bolstered the defense. Like, how do you not like them more than you did last year? I just didn't understand.
Well, the ones who disagreed with you last year would say, "But Walt, you told us that the going to new coordinators makes a big difference. I can't bet them this year. You proved it to me last year with the 2 guys that are no longer there."
That's true. Yeah.
That's how the public thinks.
Yep.
Or large part of the public thinks. You do have to know the quality of the coordinators, and I guess you'd have to say that Steichen and who was the other one that they lost, who's with Arizona now?
Gannon.
Or with Gannon, yeah. They've done decently with the Colts and the Cardinals. You can't turn around franchises immediately, but the Colts were 9-8, I think, the last year, and I think this year as well, weren't they? And the Cardinals improved from last year and were in playoff contention until very late in the season. But yeah, offensive coordinators and even the assistant coaches to the coordinators make a big difference. But I've also never liked by the way, if I'm the Commanders, I pay whatever it takes to keep Kingsbury around.
Yeah, it sounds like Kingsbury said that he doesn't have interest in being a head coach.
Not until he gets a great offer that doubles his salary.
Right. Well, of course.
No, seriously, that what he was able to do with a rookie quarterback shows not just his talents, but obviously Daniel's talents as well. Mm-hmm. And when you consider that you had in Quinn a proven head coach, but coming in for his first year, it's not exactly what Houston did last year with Stroud and DeMeco Ryans, because Quinn was a veteran coach, but you still had a rookie quarterback having, well, by all arguments, I mean, you'd have to say Stroud had a sensational season last year, not so much this year, but Daniels had, arguably the best rookie quarterback season in history.
Yeah, I think it was John in the chat. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but he said, it helps Kingsbury that he doesn't have a Call of Duty addict as a quarterback. He's a real quarterback on their center. So, I mean, no, Daniels is incredible.
He's got a quarterback who plays games, but those are football games, not video games.
Yeah, he does the virtual reality stuff to train himself for the game.
Yeah.
It's incredible. He's just. I mean, like, I hope this continues. I like seeing greatness, so I hope he doesn't backslide like Stroud did this year, or suffer an injury.
He doesn't seem to have that personality. He seems very much in. He's extremely well liked by his teammates.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And they respect. And to get that kind of respect as a rookie is unusual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the only worry I have is the injuries, because he doesn't have a big frame, but injuries are so fluky anyway, so it's hard to even predict. But they did derail Robert Griffin's career, so hopefully that doesn't happen. I'm very curious to see what they do in the offseason. I'm going to be publishing my free agency rankings, by the way, on come Monday, I think. And so, yeah, T. Higgins is at the top. They can get him. They can get a bunch of other guys. They could be a terrifying team next year.
Who's your top quarterback, just a free agent quarterback?
Let's see. It is Sam Darnold.
Okay.
62nd overall in the top 100.
Yeah, well, that tells you the weakness of the. Darnold is fine, but I mean, you would see a more premier quarterback as the top quarterback free agent, higher in the rankings.
The top 5 quarterbacks in free agency this year, according to my rankings, this is very bleak. After Sam Darnold, it is Jameis Winston, then Jacoby Brissett, and then Mac Jones, and then Joshua Dobbs. not great. And then Trey Lance and Cooper Rush.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't really excite anybody. Darnold will probably get the best contract because at least, he proved himself for the majority of the season. They were a pretty decent offense. Of course, it's funny sometimes when you get, Addison and and Jefferson and those kind of receivers to work with, makes a big difference.
Oh yeah, the great coaching staff too. I mean,
Yeah.
they put him in the best positions. And
By the way, who would you vote for coach of the year? Because there are a number of really good candidates. O'Connell is like the number one. I think you can make a case for Campbell. I think you can make a case for Quinn.
I think I would go Kevin O'Connell. I just people heading into the year, people thought Minnesota was going to finish last in the division.
Remember, both Minnesota, Denver. Actually, you could put the Peyton in there as well.
Yeah.
Minnesota, Denver, and I think Washington as well. 6.5.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible. Denver, I thought was pretty fluke. They had so many fluky wins. Although I'm not gonna say that it was all fluky, but it was. Of those three teams you mentioned, I think they were a big step behind the other two.
Well, the other thing is with Minnesota.
Yeah,
I think Brian Flores had a tremendous impact on that team's ability to win games this year.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, he did an incredible job with that team. It's a shame that Christian Darrisaw got hurt. They're incredible left tackle. I thought they were one of the best teams in the NFL before he got hurt, and then once he went down,
the impact was seen.
I downgraded the Vikings to my Group B instead of Group A. So, I think it's Kevin O'Connell because everyone thought they're going to finish last, especially when JJ McCarthy went down. Sam Darnold is just beaten up quarterback, journeyman. At least with if you want to compare them to Washington, at least like you can say Jaden Daniels was a big part of the resurgence in Washington. But
that's part of coaching. That's part of coaching too.
Right.
Yeah,
that's true.
Quinn, defensive background, said, "Cliff, you take over. I'm staying out of it."
Yeah. No, I mean, they did a great job with Jaden Daniels. But Jaden Daniels is, I think, obviously far and away the far better player than Sam Darnold. And so the way
what Washington did, remember, they arguably he's not going to win it, but he's in the conversation. Daniels candidate for MVP.
Yeah, I think. I mean, obviously he's going to win Rookie of the Year. I think that
he'll finish 4th or 5th in MVP, maybe 3rd, but I'd say 4th or 5th.
I think.
You'll have two. You'll have Allen and Jackson. Isn't that a country singer, Alan Jackson? But they spells it wrong. ALAN versus ALLEN first last name. Yeah. And then Barkley will finish 3rd. And I think I would not be surprised if Daniels finished 4th. Purcell will get some votes too.
I could see Burrow getting some consideration as well. Yeah. Considering what he did this year. Let's see, Liam Cohen, now a Jaguars candidate that Balky left. Yeah. That I thought that was, that was so embarrassing what the Jaguars what happened to them with the two coaches they interviewed. They wanted nothing to do with Trent Balky. So,
Cohen was one of them.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, if I were the Buccaneers, and I was thinking if I got the sense that Liam Cohen was going to leave, I think I would have fired Todd Bowles and named Liam Cohen head coach. I'm not a big Bowles fan. I think
he's gotten this team to the playoffs. What, 5 of the last 6 years, 4 of the last 5 years? He's got to get some credit for that.
And Tom Brady had a big factor.
Well, for the first 3 years, but they made it last year and this year.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. But anyway,
what you do is you do like what I said with Kingsbury. You give Cohen a healthy pay raise, make him assistant head coach, and maybe you do what Kraft did with the Patriots and said, "Okay, Mayo, you're going to be the guy who takes over after Belichick. Only if Cohen has better success, he would coach a second year."
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think you definitely give him just a big pay raise, stuff like that. So. By the way, one of the quarterbacks didn't mention Justin Fields. He was.
By the way, I'm looking at the Cassandra Future. Does that mean that 6 is the best he can finish? No, because that's the AP Player of the Year. That's not the not the AP. That's maybe it's the NFL Network or some organization that I don't think is the official what they use for the MVP voting. I think I'm not positive on that.
Yeah. We had John says the Jets cut Rodgers, he would be above Darnold. Yeah, I mean his age is an issue, and he wasn't coming off a great year, but I still would rate him over Darnold. So Okay. I don't know if anything else, but I know you have to go. So and
So I wonder why maybe Mike McCarthy wasn't considered for the Jets job, since he does have that connection with Rodgers for maybe a year or two.
that is true. I really don't like Mike McCarthy, but
No,
that's
well,
actually
like we said, he gets him to the playoffs, and Prescott gets him out.
right. Yeah, yeah, that was I don't know, but I mean Rogers. I don't think Rogers and McCarthy parted on the best of terms. So
Yeah, I'm not sure of that, but probably Rodgers was. Rodgers was, I think, irked at the fact that they were committed to Love for the future.
Yeah,
which may not turn out to be a bad thing. Although, it's always hard to say early on. I don't know that he could have the kind of career that Favre and Rodgers had, but the jury's still out.
We'll see. He was a disappointment for sure to close out the year, but I think he was playing injured, and the Packers don't have a number one receiver. They have a bunch of number twos.
Yeah.
I think they really need a number one.
And we don't know how long Watson's going to be out.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a shame what happened with him. Although I got into an argument or a sort of a Twitter fight with his dad.
Oh,
his dad misinterpreted what I said. So what happened was we had a string of bad luck with our player props getting injured. So like we had Mike Evans, for example, he got hurt, and then we lost on that. And then the next night, we bet Christian Watson over, and he got hurt. And so I tweeted, I tweeted a link to the recap, and I'm like, yeah, Christian Watson gets hurt, of course. Saying of course, as in we lost because he got injured on our.
I found it.
You found the Lawrence thing.
I found the Walter Football reference. Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. In fact, I think it was the lead story. I'll read it to how it happened. It says, "Good Lord, Philadelphia Eagle fans were horrified on social media. This is bad," a fan stated. "If you're any type of a real human being from Philadelphia, you learn how to spell Eagles practically in the womb. Very disturbing. It all happened after Philly Mayor Sherelle L. Parker joined other city officials to discuss snowstorm preparation for the wintry pattern sweeping through the Northeast. And upon signing off, she led an unintelligible Eagles chant that completely missed the mark. Let me hear you all say ELZSES, Eagles, let's go Birds." And then he reported your comment. "Second grade spelling skills aren't a requirement to be mayor of Philadelphia," said Walter Football. That's the one. So apparently he read your tweet. I guess that was a tweet, and he must have read it, or someone passed it on to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That we've been having fun with that all week.
Yeah.
She has yes, it's not required to have second grade spelling skills if you're mayor of Philadelphia. Which I by the way, for those wondering, I did not vote in the mayoral election because I do not live in the city of Philadelphia. I live right outside. So
by the way, did you hear from the mayor's office?
Did not. If I
because I would think it would get up to there somewhere, and they'd probably they would probably send you a plaque or a letter saying "Thank you, Walter." WATLER.
Yeah, exactly. It's man, how embarrassing is that? But we've had so many embarrassing Philadelphia mayors. It's unbelievable. So anyway, as far as
the old story was, and you weren't alive then, with Frank Rizzo. He was a former police commissioner, became mayor, and the joke was that I think at one time the police cars and fire trucks were both red, and he painted the police cars blue so he could tell the difference or something like that. I forget. Some old timers may remember that story from way back when.
I heard that joke before. Yeah, we've had some bad ones. As far as Christian Watson's that's concerned, he thought I was saying Watson got hurt, of course, as far as I was saying that like Watson always gets injured, haha, and he's like, this is a very classist comment. I'm like, well, I'm like, maybe you should like look into what I'm actually saying, actually link to my recap. And then like we ended up having some verbal arguments on Twitter, even though he just completely misinterpreted what I was saying. But anyway,
you could, by the way, you could go back and point out of the number of players named Watson who have been injured, not just him.
Yeah, no, that's definitely true. All right, yeah, I know you have to get to a meeting or an appointment, so we got to get going. Thanks so much, guys, for watching, listening. Really appreciate it. Andy, do you want to briefly talk about your website, thelogicalapproach.com? If I can find the link anywhere. Here it is.
Yeah, thelogicalapproach.com. I haven't been updating it the last few weeks. I've been so busy, and of course, we're ending football right now. But if the folks want to take a look, I'll have my spreadsheet up with the final college stats for this season, probably tomorrow morning, along with the and the entire NFL stats updated through this past Sunday. So you'll see the stats for the 18 teams that didn't make the playoffs, their regular season stats, and for the other 14 teams, you'll see the stats updated for however many playoff games they played, leading off with the 4 teams in action this week.
Okay, sounds good. Check out thelogicalapproach.com. Definitely sign up for Andy's newsletter. It's incredible. There's a lot of.
I'll have some information there for next year. And in fact, let me do this because I've done it before. I can send out my my hefty Super Bowl issue when that's out for people who just want to take a look at it. It's going to be much more detailed than the regular season issues. I go through a lot of history of props and things like that. If they can send me a request and just mention walterfootball.com, or you saw me on the Walter Football podcast, or heard me, I guess, you wouldn't want to see me right now. I look like who is it? Christopher Lloyd's character in Back to the Future. But nonetheless, if you just send me an email at logical7@cox.net, that's LOGICAL, the number 7 at COXcox.net, and just let me know. I'll send you the issue. That'll be out not next Tuesday or Wednesday, but the following Tuesday or Wednesday, because I'll give a nice write-up and a little bit of Super Bowl history and things like that. When it was all physical, and I had to mail it out to people. When I had to mail it out to people, people were actually telling me they got hernias. It was so heavy, but we don't do that anymore. We do it all. We do it all through email.
Nice, Cassandra. I am not wearing that. I'm wearing the 801 shirt, so yeah, you don't have to pay that out.
No, by the way, I was going to think of that at the beginning, that you should wear a shirt that would say something like plus 400 on the shirt, because the underdog part of that prop won. You did not wear the shirt for a third straight day. Maybe that's what was meant.
That'd be incredible if I could print that back quickly. Just have it in the back right there. Yeah, Dan fixed water here. Yeah,
you could have a shirt that says, plus 190 wins, and the prop would always have the underdog or the favorite part of the prop. The same shirt or not the same shirt as plus 190. So the shirt would always be correct.
Right.
They would still have to guess which is the winning end of the prop. That's
definitely true. Yeah, Dan fixed water here. Yeah, I'm out $5,000, but yeah, it sucks. Anyway,
you're out $5,000, but the temperature's in the low teens tonight, so
yeah,
it may be worth it.
Yeah, it was nice to take a shower and have my kids take a bath. So yeah, I guess we had to do it. So anyway, faulty injury report. All right, I'm gonna post Andy's email in the comments. So if you guys want to reach out to him, you can just see that email and definitely do that, because the newsletter is awesome. I highly recommend it. So thanks, Andy, for coming on once again. I love having you on as a guest. It's always
a pleasure. If we get a chance next week, probably in the next few weeks, I can do it as early as we're doing it tonight. With no football going on, and we may start getting some props out by this time next week. But we'll certainly be able to go over early thoughts on the Super Bowl matchup.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it. All right, guys, please hit like, subscribe, comment below, share this video, visit the link in the description for the merch store. We'll be back on Saturday with Tom. So can't wait to hear what he has to say about these 2 games. I actually haven't talked to him about these games, so I'll be hearing it for the first time. So, all right, guys, thanks so much once again. And Andy, thank you. And I will talk to you Saturday.